Hello! Hey! I've been begging myself recently to please take a day off, like go to the cabin. It's been one of the busiest weeks of my life. I added a couple bulbs that were burned out, so if it looks brighter, it's because I added 2 bulbs that had burned out there. Yeah. It was a really funny book. I actually hadn't read this in over 20 years. A lot of people had asked me to make a video on this, specifically on the works of Porphyry, but this is about early Christianity from the premise of the Neoplatonists. And I have to make a disclaimer, obviously, in this video, in stating that I don't care what anybody believes. I myself try not to ever touch the bear trap that is religion. I just don't care. Yeah, I'm not interested in sticking my head in the quicksand of that entire thing. This is a historical look on the premise of something that's greatly misunderstood. Plotinus himself specifically said in the Enneads, of which Porphyry is the guy that collected the works, that the absolute or the agathon was not sentient being. Of course, I don't know why people keep asking me that, but Platinian emanationism, and I'd say Neoplatonism, is really ridiculous. The term Buddhism, for example, didn't exist until the 16th century. To call something Neoplatonic or Neoplatonism is ridiculous. Pythagoreanism, Platonism, all of this is the exact same thing. All these names that were ascribed to it, of course, came a great deal later. It must be said, actually, from the outset, that the similarities between Christianity and Buddhism, which are both organized religions, unfortunately, are extremely similar. We would know nothing about so-called Buddhism if it wasn't for King Ashoka. No religion actually survives without gaining the favor of some super powerful, important, and or rich person. Powerful and rich, all the better. That is true in the case of Christianity, that about 99% certain we would know nothing about it at all if it wasn't for Constantine, and we would know nothing about so-called Buddhism if it wasn't for King Ashoka. And specifically, this is about a work that is missing because it was ordered destroyed, along with this interesting work. There's kind of a funny story behind it. This is only one of 2 works, by the way, that I know of that is both intellectually super stimulating but absolutely hilarious. It's like hardcore philosophical comedy. It's Celsus, and this was ordered destroyed and burned in 448 AD by Valentinian III and Theodosius II. Specifically, this is the Logos Aletheia. It's kind of an inaccurate translation. It's called True Doctrine as translation, but it literally means the logos of truth, but not conventional truth, rather transcendent truth. You could translate aletheia as truth, but it means something a lot more important than that. The only reason it survives, and this is really hilarious, because all of Porphyry's works, and that's what this video is about, he wrote a book, a collection, called Against the Christians, and people think superficially, especially a lot of Christians, that it was attacking the premise of Christianity, but it was not. I myself have gone after so-called Buddhism endlessly. I've jokingly said that to sum up what modern Buddhism is, and I've said this countless times over the decades, that modern Buddhism would be like if you took a Christian that didn't believe in Jesus, never read the Bible, and never wants to read the Bible. That's kind of, I have a lot of encounters with that. It's just organized religion. I try never to touch it. But the only reason this work survives is it was ordered burned and destroyed, is that Origen, the Christian mystic, if you will, the Christian theologian, specifically he was a metaphysician of early Christianity. I don't know if you know who Origen is. He wrote a rebuttal to this, and he recorded virtually everything that's in the Logos Aletheia, this book, in his own rebuttal. And by giving it attention, that's the only reason this exists. If it wasn't for the Christian, that is really, really funny. The only reason it exists is because a Christian theologian, wrote about it and then, from his own perspective, tried to rebuke it. That's the only reason we have access to this work. Unfortunately, Porphyry's work did not survive. It's called Against the Christians. But I'm trying to draw the parallels here, and I'm not interested in going after any religion in this video. I'm talking about the historical analysis and what the book is about. You might be surprised that Porphyry himself was a great admirer of Jesus, and he quotes and actually consults the oracles, and the oracles actually talk about it. But anyway, Porphyry's the guy that collected the works together after his disciple, not his disciple, his teacher, Plotinus. And of course you know who Plotinus is. They wrote the Enneads. We would actually not have the Enneads if it wasn't for Porphyry writing about them. He had a corpus of over 75 works. He died in 302 CE, or Common Era, in Rome. He gave us a glimpse into the early Christianity, and so did Celsus, by the way. This is a great book. It is absolutely hilarious and extremely intelligent. You may or may not love to read this. I actually find it extremely humorous, but it is highly intellectual, and it's a great philosophical analysis of Celsus concerning Christianity, but not Christ. Even Celsus himself admires same. So he organized the Enneads of Plotinus and wrote the life of Plotinus. Some of his great works are the Homeric Questions, Launching Points to the Realm of the Mind, and letters to his wife Marcella. So against the Christians, which of course does not exist anymore, we only have fragments of it by means of the same reason Celsus's Logos Aletheia still exists, is that it was rebuked against by Aristotle and various other Christian mystics. By the way, many Christian mystics, virtually all, by the way, all Christian mysticism and hardcore metaphysics, this is the secret, and this is not my opinion, it's a fact. All true, serious Christian metaphysics is based upon the works of Plotinus, who himself was an emanationist, no different than Plato or Socrates or Proclus Numenius Iamblichus, Damasius, all the way back to Pythagoras. So it's very, very funny. The best Christian mysticism is about 99% based in the works of Plotinus. Up till in about the 16th century, that was the secret source. They all read Plotinus secretly, either covertly or overtly. Anyway, against the Christian, composed of 15 books, we know of from the fragments, mostly due to St. Augustine, the historical criticism of the four Gospels. Specifically, we have the most evidences for was the book of Daniel. It's often quoted by Christians, by the way, as their support for their beliefs. Porphyry's other basically missing, but we still have plenty of fragments of it, philosophy from oracles, speaking about Christianity, and speaking about the celestial hierarchy and celestial intelligence that are, of course, below the one. And lastly, of course, not lastly, but from the oracles, giving praise to Pythagoras, Orpheus, and Heracles, and many oracle pronouncements about Christ and his followers. Here's one that said, the gods have pronounced Christ to have been extremely devout and having become immortal and deserved of great commendation. This is a fragment of oracles on Jesus and who he was. However, it was said of his followers that his followers, Jesus' followers, i.e. what we call, of course, Christians, were polluted. This is not me saying this, okay? I'm giving, don't go after me for discussing this subject. Try to be open-minded. His followers to be polluted, contaminated, and entangled in errors. The oracles quoted by Porphyry said that Jesus was a great spiritual teacher who instructed his followers to worship God and the Father. There's so many parallels between, and a lot of religions have enormous amounts of parallels, but between early Christianity and early Buddhism. They would not survive without, great emperors to spread the faith, Constantine on the one hand and Ashoka on the others. And his followers, after the death of both leaders, rose from the grave, whatever, I'm not interested in discussing religion here. They are extremely conflicted, and they personified the teacher as great deity. I mean, there's billions, literally billions, of so-called brass and gold-plated Buddha statues all over the earth. By the way, Buddha is not a psychophysical being. You know, the worship of, and his ashes have been found in the Sanchi Top, and they're actually scattered in various different. You're talking about a psychophysical being who ate and pooped and suffered and died. You know, you cannot give praise to a meat suit. I mean, that's just, it's absolutely reprehensible from the premise of true logical rational metaphysics. The same, I mean, there are so many parallels between early Christianity and early. By the way, the term Buddhism didn't exist until the 16th century. His teachings, according to him, the only time he called his teachings a name was Brahmayana, meaning path to the absolute in Semionica 5.4. Anyway, the oracles quoted by Porphyry said, that is, that Jesus taught his followers to worship God and the Father. The goddess Hecate oracle said that you should not speak ill of Christ, but pity the folly of mankind, referencing his followers. The issue is that Jesus, according to the oracles and from the premise of Porphyry in his missing book, of which we have fragments of, his book, of course, was against the Christians, but not against Jesus. So he's not actually attacking Jesus and his teachings, and the oracles said that he was praiseworthy. But same issues in Buddhism, you know, personification of a two-legged meat suit here. Not my position, actually it is my position, but it's the position of early Christianity as seen from the outside by the likes of Porphyry and Celsus and many others. That he commanded, the issue is that Jesus commanded his followers to contemplate the One, and his followers instructed others to worship Jesus instead of God. Catholicism, from a philosophical perspective, takes it even further. So now instead of deification of Jesus, who by even the most faithful Christian premise was, you know, a two-legged meat suit here. I mean, if you take offense at that, you're not being rational and logical. But Catholicism took it to another level, and, you know, praising you know, the woman that gave birth to him, to Jesus, and this was considered from the highest level of Platonian and Neoplatonic, which are both one and the same thing, as ultimate heresy. Same thing happened with Gautama. He told his followers to seek the One. You could say, God, I don't really care, I'm not interested in religion. But instead, they deified him. They deified his ashes, and they built huge stupas, which are earthen mounds with countless carvings. And it's deification of a two-legged meat suit. In any translation, Gautama's last hours were in great suffering and agony and pain and retching and doubled over. You know, the same thing is true of, you know, Christianity's, you know, center core, i.e. Jesus, and his last hours, you know, under any translation from the Greek and or Aramaic, you know, great pain and suffering. And from the premise of Porphyry, who wrote against the Christians, it was not against Christ or his teachings. Rather, going after his followers is basically, you know, being absolutely heretical. And so the oracle of Hecate, Jesus was devout, and after his death, endowed his soul endowed with the immortality that it deserved, but said Christians, i.e. the followers of Jesus, edit that out. The Christians in their ignorances worshipped this one soul rather than God or the Absolute. Porphyry speaks of Jesus with great respect, but said of his followers, it was a, quote, irrational and unexamined faith, leading men to turn away from God by identifying Jesus as a supreme principle. And to Porphyry, this was considered ultimate blasphemy and impiousness. And it is the case, and this was composed, this work, as well as this work, even a little earlier from Celsus, in the very earliest, and this is very important for an examination of Christianity, even early Christian followers shortly after his death, you know, gave great cause against this movement of, and I'll be blunt, from a metaphysical perspective, this is what this is: praise and deification of a two-legged meat suit. And this, regardless of religion, and Buddhism unfortunately did this, and this of course is the issue with organized religions, is that nothing true is popular, nothing popular is true. Religion is always, always, always secularized metaphysics. And what that means, it means it's dumbed down and popularized. Christians feared Porphyry's philosophy from oracles, which was against the Christians also, because it was the very first so-called pagan, and pagan is just a pejorative to refer to anything that's not Judeo-Christian, pagan account of Jesus, to give a positive slant on Jesus, but at the same time being a stinging rebuttal that he was to be considered as or like unto God, you know, right beside is the secondary, but equal to God. And even in early Christianity, Porphyry being set aside and Celsus being set aside, there was a great debate. And of course, we know how that debate finally won out. The deification of this psychophysical, meat suit, two-legged person, you know, flesh and blood, you know, elevated to the principle of the absolute, was from the rational, logical, sane view of the Neoplatonists and the Platonists as, you know, utmost heresy. You know, that you've taken something that is psychophysical and is born and dies, and you put it at the absolute pinnacle of the very utmost pinnacle to be worshipped and whatnot. And this was considered heresy, you know, by many, not just Porphyry or Celsus. Early Christians were in major dispute, and there's tons of evidence of this, on the status of Jesus. You know, is he God? Is he a son of God? You know, how can we take this psychophysical being and put him on the utmost pedestal and the utmost position? And logically and rationally, this was a point of great contention and debate, and we know how that debate finally ended out. The Christians, of course, destroyed the works of Porphyry against the Christians, and they also, too, destroyed philosophy from oracles. We have enormous amounts of fragments of these because they were rebelled against by St. Augustine and Origen and others. And the same reason, that's the only reason this is hilarious. I mean, this is just such a good read. This only exists because of the Christian mystic Origen. Otherwise, I mean, it was ordered, burned, and destroyed. Emperor Julian, who said, and this is the premise of Celsus and Porphyry and other non-Christians at the time, in Christianity's early infancy. We're talking about 150 A.D. or C.E. accurately to 250 C.E. Porphyry actually died in, was it 302? Yeah, 302 in Rome. Very earliest premises that this praise of a psychophysical being is heresy. Anyway, Emperor Julian said, there is, speaking of the Christians and going after them, said, there's nothing in your philosophy beyond the one word, believe. It's considered by the Platonists, Neoplatonists, and the rational metaphysicians and philosophers, been around for, you know, eons before Christianity came along, that you had to have union with the one, which you only gain through wisdom and insight and this theurgic process. And the idea that what it does is that, and this was also too an attack by Porphyry and others, and logically and rationally so, and I agree with it, it is anti-intellectualism. It actually gathered and heaped up followers that didn't have to do anything. You know, to make a cake, you got to collect the ingredients, you have to know how to cook it, you know how to put the ingredients together. And from the premise of this religion, it's extremely popular. So, well, for salvation, all you have to do is believe. And this was very, very greatly attacked by those outside of early Christianity. You know, what Porphyry saw, the irrational and anti-intellectualism of the Christian dogma and faith, that mere belief alone was enough to ensure salvation, and this he considered high blasphemy. And rightly so. I certainly do agree with it. I've made a million videos saying that belief is the plaything of children. Wisdom is the tool of the wise. Wisdom and wise is kind of a little bit redundant there, but I think you got the point. So, rational mystical assent to the one in Neoplatonism and Pythagoreanism i.e. theurgy is that basis of true salvation, i.e. returning to the source by me. I should never drink pineapple juice before doing a video. It's kind of dried out my mouth. No pineapple juice. Mental note. True salvation, returning the source by means of the mind or the nous, and that there is no shortcuts possible of mere faith or mere belief. All you have to do is believe. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I've talked about this endlessly and countless. All you have to do is believe. You'll be saved. You know, this is... there's no shortcuts. You know, worshiping a psychophysical being of flesh and blood was considered by in early Christianity, but for Christianity established itself, much less long before Catholicism came along, long before, that you only had to have mere belief, and then you elevated this psychophysical being to the station of the absolute and utmost high. So the oracles told Porphyry, and Porphyry agreed and never went after Jesus himself or his teachings. A lot of Christians think that sense. Well, this guy wrote against the Christians, and it was ordered burned and destroyed, and so it was. And so was this work. The Logos Aletheia. It should be translated as true doctrine. Logos Aletheia is almost untranslatable. I know exactly what it means, but translating in English is not so easy. This only exists because a Christian mystic, you know, decided to copy it all down in its attack on it, i.e. Origen. It's funny how when you give something attention, you keep it alive. If they had ignored it, we would know of none of these things. If all the Christian mystics had ignored the Logos Aletheia and Porphyry's against the Christians, and also, too, philosophy from the oracles, we would know nothing about them. But because they did, we do. But it gives us a window, an insight into early Christianity. Early Christians, outside of Porphyry and Origen and Celsus and all the rest, they were at odds themselves in elevating you know, Jesus to the highest station. Rationally, logically, intelligently, philosophically, metaphysically, it is completely irrational to do that. And that is what Porphyry went after, not Jesus himself and not his teachings, because even the oracles said that he had attained to immortality after death, and that he was not to be you know, slandered or put down or attacked. This actually is reflected in Mahatma Gandhi. I'm going to get the quote wrong, but this is basically what he said. He was asked something about Christianity, and Gandhi said, "I'm a great believer." I might get this slightly wrong. Okay, but he said this. Gandhi said he was a great admirer of Jesus Christ, but he was not fond of his followers. I think this is essentially what Porphyry and Celsus and the rest said. So, when people think that Neoplatonism and genuine metaphysics ever went after Jesus, some branches of modern-day fringe have. This is true, but they did not. They just went after their followers. It's like, you should listen to what Jesus said rather than deifying this psychophysical being, because you cannot praise a psychophysical being as akin to the transcendent, ultimate, the absolute. It's just that they consider that just absolute heresy. So this is the premise behind Porphyry, who was the disciple of Plotinus, is really his primary disciple, and the guy that collected his Enneads together. Without Porphyry, we wouldn't have the Enneads, and we certainly wouldn't have a glimpse into the life of Plotinus, which was written by Porphyry. I read every comment, tell me what you think, but whatever you do, don't get mad at me. I was just going over historical, point-by-point summation of the principles of Porphyry on this topic, on early, very, very, very early proto-Christianity. And it's really a very important point. This book is hilarious once again. There is only two works on the other work that's super intelligent and super hilarious are the writings of Gemistus Platon. Yeah. He goes after an Aristotelian scholar. I mean, he's just brutal. It's hilarious and intellectually stimulating, and this is the only other work that's like that. Super intellectual, super wise, super intellectually stimulating, and at the same time, hilarious. Another book, a video that I recommend, I forget when it was made, 2001, it stars Ralph Fiennes, no? It's called Luther. The movie is called Luther. It was excuse me. A movie made in 2000, 2005. It's the story of Martin Luther against the Catholics. It's a really, really good movie to watch, and it's the documentation of how Luther went against the non-doctrinal stuff of the Catholic Church. It's like, this stuff isn't in the Bible. We shouldn't be believing in this stuff. Basically, it's a really, really good movie to watch. It's intellectually stimulating, dramatic, and wonderful. I've seen it many times. You want a good movie recommendation that everybody keeps asking me for? Get a hold of the movie Luther, L-U-T-H-E-R. Not Lex Luthor, okay? As in Martin Luther, not Lex Luthor. Thank you so much for watching. If everyone contact me, my information is in the description below. Any donation is always warmly welcome and greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Lux Veritas.